All right, so we're holding in Tanya that we finished the Lashon of the Gemara in Masechta Nida, where the Alter Rebbe quotes what is a drasha we saw of an Amoira over there, Rabbi Shamlai or Simlai, who, judging by the Lashon in the Gemara over there, it's only an Amoira. Notwithstanding that, the Alter Rebbe used the word Tanya, which means upright. We mentioned the whole Inyan in the previous classes. And the Shavua, which is given to the person, we also discussed to whom are we giving the Shavua. Are we giving it to the Nefesh HaBamis or the Nefesh HaLakisa? To whom is the Shavua Be'etzem? And we saw that it's a double Shavua. Tehei Tzadik, it must be a Tzadik, Be'al Tehei Rosha. Well, that's l'chera a double expression. If you give a person an oath that he's going to be a Tzadik, then he can't be a Rosha. So, what do you mean by saying that be a Tzadik and don't be a Rosha? So the truth of the matter is that the Alter Rebbe answers that much later in Perek Yud Daled. In Tanya we'll see that there's an answer is given to that question. However, we see that the oath is given to a person in such a way that we're somehow or another slightly in doubt as to what he's going to make, even with the oath. And our oath is a very tremendous inyan, as we saw. It's brought down that to give an oath is one of the most strict and terrible things, al pi Torah. It's written in Divrei Chazal that when the Eibishter said in the Aseret HaDibros, Lo yisiso Hashem Elokecha l'shov, it's well known that you must not mention the name of your God in vain or for no purpose, that even though the whole world was shaking anyway then because it was Matan Torah, but the world shook especially when the Eibishter said that taking the Eibishter's name is a very, very serious, in vain or for no purpose, is a very serious matter. So we give a person an oath. It seems that we're slightly hesitant about the first part of the oath, because we say to him Tehei Tzadik, and then we immediately follow up and say El Tehei Rosha, which is like a way of saying that I appreciate it's going to be tremendously difficult for you to be a Tzadik. At least don't be the opposite. Don't do the most terrible other possibility. So that's very fascinating. Why do we do that? And as we see, it's not tremendously clear. The whole Arichas in Tanya is very profound. But one has to pick up carefully the answers to these questions as we go along. But we see that then the Gemara comments. Now some people have the opinion that this comment is also part of the oath that we give him. Va'afilu, and even kol ha'elam kuloi emrim lecha tzadik ato, that all the world will be saying to you that you are a tzaddik, hayei beinecha karosho, you must be in your own eyes as you were a Rosha. Now the word Rosha, if we look up the purish of the word Rosha, that means a person who deliberately goes against the instructions of Hashem. He deliberately does not keep Hashem's requirements in life. Not the mitzvahs asay, and not the mitzvahs lois asay. Be'ika, he doesn't keep the mitzvahs lois asay. As well known, the Rosha is be'ika, in reference to the negative commandments. So, we're saying, how can we require that you be in your own eyes like a Rasha? And particularly we'll say that that's part of the oath. It's all other people, and that's just like a comment that the oath is Tahei Tzadik ve'al Tahei Rasha. And then there's a comment, Afilu kol ha'olam omrim lecho tzadikato. Don't listen to them, but you must be like a Rasha in your own eyes. However, others learn that itself is part of the oath. So if that's part of the oath, then we're going to see that's really difficult to understand, that we should give a person our oath that he should see himself as a Rasha, because a Rasha is a very definite hepech of Torah mitzvahs, and what is required by a mitzvah. Me'esh HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a Rasha is a person who does deliberately fakir. So, how can we require? And who is this kula? Kolo Elam Kula Emrim Lecha. Who are these people? Kolo Elam. Everybody's, the whole world is packing up with cable television to say to you that you're a tzaddik. I mean, what is it? What does it mean? Kolo Elam Kula. So therefore, some great chassidim said and even wrote that Kolo Elam Kula refers to you. It refers to your own world and your own little how to call it, a vision of yourself. So afilu yourself tells you that you're pretty good, boy. You're doing well, and you're a tzaddik. Is then don't listen to him, but you should be in your own eyes like you're not a tzaddik at all, but you're albeit it doesn't say a Rasha mamish, but ko Rasha with a kofadim yain. You should be like a Rasha. So we see then that the whole leaning of the Shavua tends to be in the direction of avoiding how do you call it, the Indian of being a Rasha, and yet, because we said there seems to be some slight doubt as to whether we really believe that he's going to be able to keep the Shavua, that he be a tzaddik, and therefore we say at least don't be the opposite. And then we say to him, however, it's better that you should be in your own eyes for the whole of your life, it would appear. Kol hazman v'kol hayom kulei, you have to be in your own eyes as an evil person, as a Rasha. So that's a pretty heavy, would appear, demand, notwithstanding the slight doubt that we have as to whether you're going to really be able to make the oath to be a tzaddik. But tzaddik lahovin, on that basis, the oath already starts off now with a famous kasha. That if that's the case, that you must not listen to yourself, or to anybody else for that matter, informing you that you're a tzaddik and you must be in your own eyes like a Rasha, then we have to understand, says the Alter Rebbe, tzaddik lahovin, we need to understand the word Tanan. We learned in a Mishnah, the word Tanan means we learned in a Mishnah, as well known in the Gemara, and everybody's familiar with this Mishnah because they say it every Shabbos during not every Shabbos, but every few Shabbos during the summer, or when we say Pirkei Ovis, the whole summer, in Ovis, Perek Beis, then it's written, Va'al tehei Rasha b'fnei atzmacho, that you should not be an evil person in front of yourself. Al tehei Rasha b'fnei atzmacho. And now the Alter Rebbe goes on and he says, V'gam im yeh beinav karosha, and even if he will be in his eyes like an evil person, yeira levavei, it will be, his heart will be very. You guys got some difficulty over there? Huh?
Yeah, we're good, thanks.
Is there some problem?
Yeah, I don't know where we are.
So, leave him alone. You have a problem?
Yeah, I don't know where we are.
Oh, you don't know where we are?
Yeah.
But we're about the fourth line down from the top of the page.
So,
Does anybody else have the same problem? Anybody else have the same problem? That they don't know where we are? Okay. So it says the Alter Rebbe, it's written in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Ve'al tehei rosha b'fnei atzmacha. Now, stop. After the word atzmacha, that is a quote from the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Now, a Mishnah is a very strong raya, particularly that we began with Tanya, which is a brisa. Now, Tanya represents an outside koyah from the Mishnah, or being a Tanaic koyah, but an outside koyah from the Mishnah. But a Mishnah is a very powerful raya. If I can bring you a proof or an indication from a Mishnah, then I have a very powerful basis on which to base myself. But the fact that it seems to be a clear, mafurish, openly stated Mishnah, Al tehei rosha b'fnei atzmacha, goes on the Alter Rebbe, and then he says, V'gam im yeh be'eno karosha, and let's say that he will be in his eyes like a rosha. V'gam im yeh, let's say that he will be like a rosha, then yeira levavei, his heart will be disturbed, his heart will be angered or made evil from this. He will become upset, to use an expression in English. V'yeh eitzev, and he will be depressed. V'lo yuchal laved Hashem b'simcha u'b'tov levav. And since he will be depressed, he won't be able to serve Hashem. Laved means to serve. B'simcha u'b'tov levav, with joy and with the goodness of heart. V'im lo yeh levaveh, I say you say, well, maybe he shouldn't then be in a bad way from this. He shouldn't be upset by it. So the other way would be that if he weren't to be upset by it. So he said, V'im lo yeh levaveh klal, and if it was suggest to him that he doesn't at all allow himself to be upset, mizeh, from this, that he considered himself Rasha, Yochel lovei lidei kalus chasve shalom. He could possibly come to lightheadedness. You know, he could be, how do you call it, unduly easy about Torah and mitzvah. He can say, well, you know, I'm a Rasha, but I'm not supposed to be upset by it. You know, so if I'm not upset by it, then the simon is not really all that serious what you do. But maybe he can become easy-headed, how do you call it, light-headed, and he won't care very much whether he's doing Isa or Heter, or whether he's doing proper or improper. It won't bother him anymore. So you might say, well, wait a minute, what do you mean it won't bother him? So we have to say that he would make a decision in his heart that it won't bother him. He'll be clear, because he's got to serve the age of a simcha v'tuv levav. Remember, he's going to make a firm decision not to be upset by anything. And so since he's not going to be upset by whatever will happen, he could come to be light-headed in reference to Torah and mitzvahs. Chas v'sholem. Now, that last statement, beginning with the word v'gam im yeh be'eno karosha, well, that's what we call a svara. It's all what we call that's a form of reasoning. That's not something which is written in a Mishnah, or maybe not in a pasuk. Maybe yeah, but maybe not. And the Alter Rebbe seems to put in a whole big svara, even though he bought me a Mishnah from Pirkei Avos. He bought me a Mishnah, and then in addition he's v'gam. And furthermore, if it'll be the way you say, if he will think that he's a Rasha, then he won't be able to serve Hashem b'simcha v'tuv levav. Who said you have to serve Hashem b'simcha v'tuv levav? That would seem that the Alter Rebbe is just assuming that that's an obvious and that's an unarguable point, a point that's not even given to any argument of any sort, that you have to serve the Eibishter b'simcha or b'tuv levav, not just b'simcha, but with a good heart. You have to be deep in your heart, or even pnimi, you have to be good about things. You have to be happy and good and thankful and full of chayas and levity, positivity about every Indian in lavod as Hashem, to serve Hashem. And that seems to be an unarguable point. That's just obvious that you have to be that way. But if you'll think you're a Russia, then you won't be besimcha v'tov levav. Good. So the other possibility is, well, don't be upset by the fact that you're Russia. Just make a decision that you won't be upset. Adequate. Don't allow there to be any walls of prevention in your mind. You don't have anything. You're just 100% open and okay, even with the fact that you're a Russia. Which means if you're a Russia, then it means that what you're doing is a deliberate defiance of Hashem. What you're doing is not good. No, you shouldn't worry about that. Don't, under no circumstances, be concerned by that. Then you'll just treat everything as light. You'll say, well, all this I've heard about being, Russia's not so terrible. What's it? I'm allowed to be b'simcha v'tov levav, even though I'm a Russia. So therefore, says the Alter, it's what we call mimon avshach. But either way you look at it, either this way or that way, it's no good. Now that seems to be like a form of a svara, even though I'm going to point out in a second that maybe it's not so simple just as a pure svara, but the way the Alter Rebbe presents it, it is a form of like a reasoning. It won't be this way and it won't be that way, it won't be that. So the question is, we had a raya from a Mishnah. Why do we have to bring in that whole piece to sort of convince the reader even further, even though we brought you a raya from Pirkei Ovid? And therefore, we could say that just in a general way, without going too deep into the matter, we could say that the Alter Rebbe is basing himself on a principle what we find quite often in the Gemara. And that is that quite often the Gemara brings a certain proof to a certain argument, and then it'll say, "V'i bo yisema," and if you want, I will say. And then it gives another proof, or svara, or way of answering what was already been answered. Now, some people learn that the Ibo Yisema, because the Gemara wasn't 100%, pleased with the first earth, there's something deep, something there in the first earth, so they puts in an extra one. Some people learn that it's just like a inin of lahagdil Torah lahadi, to make more and more Torah, more and more. I answer that. If you want, I can answer you that. Ibo Yisema, if you want, I will say kach for kach. So some people want to say that's what the Alter Rebbe is doing. That he had a kasha from a Mishnah, but he says if you want, I'll also say kach for kach. But if we go with the principle that even when we'll say a Ibo Yisema is like an extra added thing, but not tremendous. However, if we go according to the first shitta, that there's always a little bit something not so sure in the first one, and then we put in the second one. So we can, if we look carefully into this Mishnah in Pirkei Ovid, then we can find maybe why the Alter Rebbe was a little bit not anxious to rely purely on that Mishnah from Pirkei Ovid. Because there are several Pirushim, and what does the Mishnah mean by saying V'al tihi Rosha b'fnei atzmacha? What did that was Rabbi Shimon ben Nasana, I think he said over there, Al tihi Rosha b'fnei atzmacha. So the Bartanura, the very famous Rashi-like Pirush on the Mishnayos, he says a very interesting pshat, which is not really very much like what the Alter Rebbe is saying. But the Alter Rebbe is saying, Al tei Rosha b'fnei atzmacha, don't be an evil person in front of yourself. Don't be evil in your own eyes. So the Bartanura says a very interesting pshat. He says, don't do something which later on you will be upset that you do it. And they say, I shouldn't have really done that, And so it's clear that Rabbi Shimon ben Nassanel is urging you, don't live too much in the past of what you've done. So that wasn't good. You have to be upset about it, but you must work further. But it's better to be very careful with all your actions, never to do something that you might be sorry about. As they learned how to come to Batanura. Well, it's not very similar to what they all did. Other people learn, interestingly enough, Al Tehei Rosha Bifnei Atzmacha means that you should never separate completely from the tzibur. You must always be part of the public, you must always be part of the general cloud, and you must try and, as much as you can, to do what other Yidden do and be at one with them, but not to make yourself a bifnei atzmacha dika, not to separate yourself off and be just on your own and have your own opinions and your own ways of doing things, because if you do that, then you'll eventually fall into not good. And therefore, don't be a Rosha bifnei atzmacha. Don't be an evil person by being on your own, because eventually you'll fall into not good even further. So it's not. However, the Rambam learns exactly the way the Alter Rebbe wanted, and the Rambam comes along, and the Rambam in the Mishnah over there in Pirkei Avos, he says you must not be evil in front of yourself. You must not consider yourself as a Rosha, because if you do, that's exactly what your Yetzer Hara wants. And Yetzer Hara will say to you, oh, you're a Rosha? Yeah, you're a really bad Rosha. He'll not leave the whole thing over. And so the Rambam says that he'll become depressed with himself. The Rambam says he'll go out to bad habits and he'll just leave Torah Mitzvah. That's the Rambam. In other words, that if you really hold your Rosha, then your Nefesh, your Yetzer Hara will agree with you. And he'll say, oh yes, you are really a Rosha, so what are we messing around doing all these good things? Just do whatever you want. So the Rambam learns that through that you can fall out chas v'sholom into evil ways. He's not the Rambam. So that's the pshat that the Alter Rebbe is going for, that you shouldn't be a Rosha bifnei atzmacha. You shouldn't look at yourself as being a Rosha, consider yourself evil, because if you do, that's not good. You fall from that. You don't gain, you lose. So, however, in the eyes of the fact that there are other pirushim in that Mishnah, and it's not all the pirushim are 100% the way we would want to understand it here in this context, and therefore the Alter Rebbe decided he would add in something. And it's like the Gemara says, I'll say another thing, because what I've said to you is good, but I'm not 1,000% happy with what I said. I'll say something else as well. And therefore, v'gam, and even more, I've got a very good spotter for you. That whichever way you look at it, it's not going to be good. Because if you'll be evil in his own eyes, then he'll be upset by it, and he won't be able to serve Hashem b'simcha b'tuv lei. Well, and if he won't be evil at all about it in his eyes, then chas v'sholom will become lightheaded, and he won't consider. So now, l'chera, we're talking about a person who really tries hard to do Torah mitzvahs. The Gemara is not talking to light-headed people l'chatchila. So all of this is obviously talking about a person that he's making a effort, and he's doing his very best, even to the point that maybe people might say about him that he's a tzaddik. So what is he doing? He might consider himself evil and fall into kalas chas v'sholom. Elamai, we see that with that the Alter Rebbe is trying to show just how absolutely out of the point such an idea is. Because if a person who's doing Torah mitzvahs all of a sudden is told to convince himself that he must never be upset by holding himself to be a Rosha, then he'll think, well, look, I'm trying so hard. I'm supposed to be a Rosha, but I'm not supposed to bother about that at all. What does it mean I'm not supposed to bother about it? Oh, great. All I've been told up to now about the strictness of mitzvahs and how important it is to guard yourself from every little thing, chas v'sholom, that the Eibusha, I shouldn't be separated, or I shouldn't transgress Hashem's will under any circumstances. Oh, I have to put all that aside, not worry about that at all. Doesn't really matter to Hashem. The ikar is Hashem wants me to be happy. A cholila, a person can. So from that we learn that emes, the truth is, you are supposed to worry about an avera, chas v'sholom. If you did something against Hashem's will, it has to bother you. It's got to bother you. And so, if it's got to bother you, then how are you going to be b'simcha of a b'tuv levov if the avera bothers you in a way that it turns you into a new image in your own eyes? That through that you're going to lose all your simcha. You're going to turn into a worried person about your own self. You're going to be disturbed and upset that I'm a Rasha. And what will that do? That will make you eitev. It'll make you upset, and you won't be able to love it as Hashem b'simcha u'b'tuv levov, which seems to be an obvious simplicity that the Alter Rebbe doesn't enter into any argument about that at all. Now, how do I know that it's so simple, and how is it so obvious to everybody that you have to serve Hashem b'simcha u'b'tuv levov? Also, we have to notice that this word, avoid, lavoid es Hashem, he won't be able to serve Hashem. Lo yuchal lavoid Hashem. He doesn't even say lavoid es Hashem. He just says lavoid Hashem, b'simcha u'b'tuv levo. Now this word lavoid, up to now, we haven't mentioned it. We've been talking about tzaddik, Rosha, Yiddishkeit or not Yiddishkeit. All of a sudden we've got now a word lavoid. So obviously with that, the Alter Rebbe he's bringing in a slightly new concept, and that is that it's not in Sefer HaTanya. The whole purpose of Tanya is not just to make you a yid that keeps Torah and mitzvahs. That's not the aim of the Sefer HaTanya. The Sefer HaTanya's aim is to make you a server of Hashem, to make you not only keep Yiddishkeit, Torah, mitzvahs, they're the basic, simple, atzmistic requirement. In addition to that, that's not the only reason you came into the world. You came into the world to keep Torah and mitzvahs in a way that you serve Hashem. Aveda. Now, Aveda means effort. In all languages and all mashmoyasim, the concept of serving, of work, the word Aveda means work, or servant. So it means an effort which is beyond just the pure norm. In other words, we can imagine where you're doing something where you're not making that effort. And therefore, we find that there's a mimer from the Alter Rebbe in another place, not in Tanya, where he says that the word Aveda is from a word that's used, when they make skins for klaf, for tefillin and for mezuzahs and for Sefer Torah. Then they work the skins. It's called working the skins. Yeah, and they put them into all sorts of liquids, and they soak them in acids, and they, all sorts of bitter things. They beat them, and all, and eventually they cut off the outer, rough parts, and then eventually they get to a very special part of or inyan in the skin, which is called klaf. And on that you can write the Sefer Torah. There are also other levels that sometimes are mentioned in the Gemara, but that's earlier stages. They need to be worked further as well before you get to the klaf. So that's called oirois avudim, says the Alter. That's called worked or efforted skins. So the word aveda is from that. But the word aveda means imkain, that you got to change something. You got to do with your Torah mitzvahs. You got to work the skins. You got to make them better, and you got to change what we're going to see as we go along. Both the guf and the nefesh habamiyas, you've got to alter them, and you've got to change something through your Torah and mitzvahs, and you've got to be a servant of Hashem. In other words, you've got to be devoted to Him in a way that your Torah and mitzvahs are by way of avodah, by way of serving, changing, breaking the status quo the whole time. So the Alter Rebbe says that if you are Rasha in your own eyes, how are you going to serve Hashem? And he said, not only that, how are you going to serve Hashem? B'simcha b'tuv levo. And the Alter Rebbe just says that that's obvious that you got to serve Hashem b'simcha b'tuv levo. Now we could say, who said? Where do you know? So the truth of the matter is, even that point itself, we can say, is both a pasuk and it's a svara. It's a well-reasoned point in its own right. The pasuk is a pasuk in the Teichacha of Devarim, right at the end of the Torah. A very famous pasuk. When I say it's a famous pasuk, it's a bit more well known than some of the psukim. And it says that over there, Tachas asher loi avadata es Hashem merakecha besimcha ubetov levov mireiv koel v'avadata es oyevecha chas v'shorim rachmanin v'tlan hoya loisia. It's written that instead of serving Hashem your God besimcha ubetov levov, then rachmanin v'tlan you're serving your enemies. You're serving your those who hate you. So we see then that there's a demand that you have to serve Hashem somehow or another with the expression simcha b'tuv levov may rave curl from everything good that you have. You've had everything good. And it's clear that the Eibusher is saying, I gave you everything good. And instead of being b'simcha b'tuv levov, then you were not b'simcha b'tuv levov, and that's why you had to serve your enemy. Now the truth of the matter is that even that is given to interpretations as to what does that pasuk really mean. Because some people want to learn, not everybody, but some people, they want to say that what does it mean that you weren't serving Hashem and you were b'simcha b'tuv levov from that. In other words, you weren't serving Hashem and you were quite happy not to serve Him. That's what the pasuk means. And that's why you get such a terrible punishment of serving your enemies. But the Rizal and others learn, which we're going to see later on in Tanya Chap 26, they learn no. That what it means is Tachas Ashaloi Avatas Hashem Alakecha B'simcha B'tuv Levov. All runs on in one. That you have to serve the Eibusher B'simcha B'tuv Levov. Me Rave Kill, more than all the good things that you could possibly have in this life, has to be your simcha in serving Hashem. That's how the Rizal learns. So the Rizal learns not only that you have to serve Hashem b'simcha, b'tuv levov, you have to serve Him b'simcha, b'tuv levov, more than any other fulfillments or joys or possessions that you could have in this world. More than them, mireiv kel. That's after you have to serve the Eibusher. Now, we could say that the Alter Rebbe is taking into account that pasuk. He uses the lashon of the pasuk. And he's assuming that you know that that's the real pshat, or the pshat according to the Kabbalistim and the Hadikon, the Rizal, and the other great teachers of the Kabbalah, that you have to be b'simcha b'tuv levov in a very, very high way. You've got to be more happy in serving Hashem than all the good things of this world. But it's got to be in a way of tachas sheshaleo vadata. You didn't serve the Eibusher. In other words, not just you didn't keep Torah and mitzvahs, but you didn't give yourself over to Him, and you didn't serve Him, and give away all yourself, and your koiches, and your whole being to be changed, and be better, and be something different. And that's got to be the simcha b'tuv lei, well, that's going to be with tremendous simcha. So we can say that that's based on that pasuk. Particularly the Alter Rebbe quotes that lashon of that pasuk. However, one can say that it's also a simple svara. But just imagine, there's a famous, in Likutei Torah, there's a moshel that the Alter Rebbe brings. That what about a king who decided he's going to make a tour around his country to see what's up with his subjects, how they're doing. And wherever he goes, he sees that all his subjects are all upset and they're all angry and they're all breakers. And they're not particularly happy to see him and all that. So the king is very, very upset. he doesn't ever want any kesher with these people. He says, these are my subjects. So I'll make even worse laws. I'll be even tougher with these guys. But if he comes and he sees that everybody is betachas a simcha, and they also, what's everybody so happy? Well, because we've got Baruch Hashem, a good king, and we're a good country, and we're happy servants of our majesty, of our king, and we're happy to be, and we're happy to go ahead, and whatever he will demand of us, we're prepared to do it, and keep it up for the good of his purpose in our country. So when the king sees that, he says, oh wow, this is really great, this is my kingdom, this is my subjects, these are my people, I'm going to give them more. The king becomes even more involved and devoted to his subjects than he was before. In other words, that the simcha is a obvious thing. If you don't serve Hashem b'simcha, it's like you're looking at Hashem and say, listen, you're taking the rule of the universe, you created the world, why did you have to give me such a sour punishment, give me such a terrible life? That's obviously not what Hashem wants of us. And to the point, it's put down the Zohar HaKadosh, very famous Zohar, in Pasha Tetzaveh. It's brought down that exactly the way you look at Hashem, that's the way Kaviyachol, so if you look at Hashem with an upset face and with an angry face, are you listening, by the way? If you look at Hashem with an angry face and with an upset face, Hashem looks back at you with an angry face. But if you look at Hashem with a happy face and with a satisfied face and a good face, then he looks back at you like that. In other words, exactly the way you, Kaviyachol, the face you show to Lamayla, that's the type of face they show you. This is the Zohar HaKadosh, very famous statement in the Zohar HaKadosh. If you go around the whole time breathing and complaining, then Hashem is breathing and he complains about you. But if you go around the whole time, as much as you can, you b'simcha and b'tul levav, and you trust in him and you accept him and so on, what he gives you, it's good, doesn't matter what it may happen to be, then that's the way Hashem will look at you, Milmaila, and he will give you Toiv Anir Vanikla. As is of the Gemara in, the Zohar HaKadosh in Pacha Tetzaveh. Amamela Lafisha, it follows that the Alter Rebbe said, if you're Eitiv means, you're depressed, that can't make sense. That can't possibly be. So therefore he says, that just makes sense in simple terms, that you have to be, that's a door moving, and there's no argument about that. That's a door poshet. But if you're going to be upset the whole time, then you won't be able to do that. On the contrary, you'll be doing the opposite of what's really required of you. You'll say, in Cain, if that's the case, I've always got to be besimcha, even though I know I'm a Rasha. So how am I going to do that? How can I be besimcha if I know I'm a Rasha? Not to think about it. So the Alter Rebbe said, what do you mean not to think about it? Cholila. You did averas, serious averas, not to think about it, not to take that as being a serious matter. Chas v'sholom, that can turn a mensch into a kal. He can drift out. Even though he really meant good at the beginning, you can have an opposite effect of it. You can cause him to drift into a thing which Chas v'sholom is not required from heaven. Adafa, that's the kasha that the Alter Rebbe asked. So it's very interesting to notice that the Alter Rebbe doesn't ask the kasha, how come you can give a person a oath to be a tzaddik? That's a tremendously hard thing. You should have built up a whole kasha. That's a very, very hard thing. He asked the kasha on the second part of it, al tehei rasha, but on if that's part of the shavua, the last part of it. And the last part of it says you should always be in your eyes as a Rosh. You must never consider yourself a tzaddik. Boom. On that the Alter Rebbe hits with the kasha. We could have gone right back to the beginning and we could have said, wow, give a person a shvur to be a tzaddik. Tzaddik's a tremendously hard thing. And that's like what he says. To be a tzaddik is very, very elevated and tremendous inyan. And yet the whole emphasis is on the last part of the statement, if it's part of the shavur, b'klau, Yeah, that's where the whole difficulties and all the kashas, as it were, at this point anyway, that's where they hit. So I think that takes us back to the fact that there's a slight sort of hesitation in the whole Indian, and therefore we say Tahi Tzadik out Tahiros. In other words, it's moving, and and it'll become clear that to be a tzaddik in the real sense is not a highly expectable thing of everybody, even with an oath. Even with an oath, that's not something we can really fairly expect of everybody. And therefore we add out Tehiros, don't be the opposite. And so difficult it is that even if your whole mind and your whole seichel and everything in your life tells you that you're pretty good and you're doing well and you're a tzaddik, then look at yourself as a Russian. Because that's what probably more likely the situation that you will face. In other words, in the light of what we're going to develop particularly, that's more likely the situation you will face. So therefore said the old people, you'll be a Russia in your own eyes. You'll be a Russia in your own eyes. What's with Simcha B'Tur Lev? Where's the Simcha? Who said you have to be Simcha? What do you mean? No argument about that whatsoever. Like we said, either mitzad the pasuk or mitzad the svara, the simple svara. You have to be B'Simcha. You're not going to worry about it at all. Chas v'sholom, the man should go out. Who knows what can happen to him. So that's the basic kasha with the whole Tanya is based, and that's how it begins. With that, based on the fact of this amazing shavua, as we said, which is given to the person prior to his coming out into the world. Now, the truth of the matter is that we find that a person, a yid, is a sworn person. In other words, there are other statements in the Gemara which lead us to understand that you have other oaths. For example, the Gemara says in one place that all Yidden, from the moment of Mount Sinai, when the Eibush gave the Torah, they're all considered as having taken an oath. Mushboim, Mushbo v'oimet mehar Sinai. A person is, it's like as if Har Sinai. Just exactly how that worked out is another, it's a long discussion. But the whole giving of the Torah and the whole way we received the Torah was like we took an oath. Particularly when we were Makayim, the whole more fully in Purim, as the Gemara says, Masechta Shabbos. But we all took on oath, as it were. So we're all, anyway, got an oath that we're going to keep the Torah and mitzvahs. And then there's another Gemara which even says that you can take an oath if you want. You can take your own oath to keep certain mitzvahs. You can actually, that you're a little bit worried that maybe you're going to be weak, you can take an oath to keep mitzvahs. So, I mean, we see that either you can take an oath, or you already been given an oath through Matan Torah at Mount Sinai. And here we see this very special oath reckoned out here in the Gemara, Tehi Tzadik Vel Tehi Rosha. And therefore we have to say, like I pointed out, that this whole Shavua is not so much just of the etzem inyan of keeping Torah mitzvahs kipshutei. Because Torah mitzvahs kipshutei, you've already got an oath from Mount Sinai. You can take an oath if you want. You can actually take an oath on yourself to give yourself extra power. But this is a very special oath, like we saw hinted in the Alter Rebbe's Kasha, La'avedas Hashem. That the whole Indian of the Sefer Tanya is to show us how we have tremendous powers hidden in ourselves from an oath that we took, that we've got to not just keep Torah mitzvahs, not just know that we have to learn Torah and keep mitzvahs, but we're going to serve Hashem. And we're going to have difficulties, and it's going to be very, very difficult to reach the perfection of that. In other words, tzaddik. The whole idea of tzaddik, the Alter Rebbe is going to show us, you're not just somebody who's going to make it into Olam Haba without any problem. And he's going to be able to have a long regime of all the good things he's done. But a tzaddik is a very high, elevated state of nefesh and of life. And it's so elevated it's going to be beyond the reach of, in inverted commas, normal people it would look, maybe. Nonetheless, you're given, the Gemara is talking about that type of shvur. You're given a shvur and an oath that you've got to go beyond yourself and you've got to reach powers, like we said, that are beyond all the powers that you have anyway in normal life. In normal life, you've got plenty of powers. Hashem gave you, even like we saw, the Makifim, Chai, the Yechida, and the Eser Koiches, the Nefesh. But this is a power which draws on, like we said, oath takes on tremendously deep powers, not just to be a good Yid al Pitor mitzvahs, but to serve the Eibishter. And it should be in an even from Simcha V'Tov Lev. Yeah, Levov, and it's got to be in an even from Tzaddik. You've got to be lechatchila aiming to reach the level of Tzaddik. Otherwise, it's kila that the whole Sefer Tanya doesn't start with you. In other words, it's very amazing that the whole of Chassidut and the whole Sefer Tanya is not just to urge us to do the minimum. The minimum, which is quite a maximum, actually, keep all Torah mitzvahs, quite an effort. That's kilo, simple bread and butter. About that I didn't write the Sefer. I didn't need to write a whole Sefer called the Tanya. That's pretty obvious. That you were at house, say nine, you're mushbay, you already got a shvur from over there. And gesundheit, use your shvur to keep what you got to keep. I've come along to show you, you've got a shvur to be a certain type of person that I want you to be. And why I wanted that? Basically, why did David want that dafki? He wanted that you should be an ideal person. That you didn't come into this world just to play around with, how do you call it? Half play, or what do they call it? Half measures and child's play. You came into the world to do the maximum and the utmost best that you possibly can. And that's the pshat Tahi Tzaddik. So the poor replied, and the Nefesh HaElokis says, Tahi Tzaddik, in that world, with all that you're going to give me, the Nefesh HaPamis, be a Tzaddik. So David says, oh yes, oh Teirosha, don't Cholila, don't be the opposite. Maybe you got a point, it's a bit hard, but just to be careful of yourself and not to fall into mistakes. Don't make a mistake about yourself, because a mistaken person he's a finished person. If he's got a mistake about himself, then he's not going to get anywhere, he's only going to make worse. So therefore says the Alter Rebbe, you should, the Gemara says, you should consider yourself as a Rosha. Don't consider yourself as a Tzaddik or Kurosha. Why a Rosha? Because you must avoid at all costs having that terrible mistake to think you're something that you're not. That is the worst possible mistake to make. To think you're something that you're not doesn't is good. And we have to guard that at all. So therefore, better that you think about yourself as a Rosh. Oh, think about yourself as a Rosh. Oh, what's going to be with Avodas Hashem? What's going to be with Simcha? What's going to be with, looking after Torah Mitzvah with a full gravity of mind? What's going to be? So, Avodas Hashem, we'll talk about that further in coming and developing episodes. But the Alter Rebbe is going to open this unbelievable document called the Tanya to show us what it's all about. And that, how do you say, we didn't come into this world to twiddle our thumbs. We didn't come into this world even to build up a nice record. We came in to serve Hashem in the most ultimate way. Good. Okay, guys.